This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap.
I can think back to many people who have had late, long-ass nights in Las Vegas, but this one probably takes the cake for a couple of teams, or at least for one team for sure this weekend. We're going to talk about the 7 hours that was the experience of the Las Vegas GP. This is Season 7, Episode 3 of the Outlap F1 podcast. Welcome on in. We're glad you're here. You've got Andy. I'm along with Cody tonight. Cody, I did not get a chance to see you over the weekend, but I saw some family and had some people over. But how's it been hanging, and how you doing?
Tell you for free, it got a lot better Sunday morning. But overall, it's a nice weekend hanging out with friends. My wife got in some good video gaming, which is, I will describe in a minute, meant that I missed about 3/4 of qualifying. Which was not the qualifying to miss, but all in all, a good time. And as I said, in terms of Formula One, it got that much better Sunday morning.
I've said it before. This sport will give it to you when you absolutely least expect it. In the weirdest, strangest of ways, sometimes it gives it to you. But anyway, we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. But if you have found our show, like I said before, welcome along. We are thrilled that you are with us tonight. You can find us always on Blue Sky. We have some account there. We are posting to X, to Instagram, to Discord, to Reddit, and of course here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you do enjoy what comes out of our mouths and what we say each time we do this, and you're on YouTube, you can drop us a like or you can subscribe to the channel. Both of those will help us out quite a bit. If you're on your favorite podcasting app and you're enjoying the content that we're bringing to you, a 5-star review would help us come up a little bit better in F1 related search results. That's why people ask you to always do it. It's just to help us come up better in search results so other people can enjoy the content that you do. You can always email the show, outlapf1@gmail.com. We'll get your thoughts to us. Thank you so much to the people who continue to support the show. You guys all know the list by now. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, who was up bright and early Sunday morning and texting me, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member and join that studious list or great list, Mount Rushmore list, great people. There's our anchor page. It has a link in our show notes, $1, $5. You don't have to give us any money if you don't want to. We're just glad you're listening. But if you'd like to do that, it will help to go to further the show's tech. Go back into the show. We're not doing it for profit or anything like that, but it'll help keep our tech relevant in this ever-changing landscape. All right, particulars are now out of the way. Cody, we're going to start with our headlines of the day. I could play a sound if you want me to, but I'll let you do it. What you got?
I'll do my best, Dumb and Dumber.
All right.
So you're telling me there's a chance. Now, I'm pretty sure I've used this headline of the day earlier this season. And the commentators at the end of the race were also saying something kind of akin to that. They were all going on about like, oh, he's still in it. You can never count him out. And at the time, I was really rolling my eyes, being like, okay, I mean, mathematically, sure. Technically, he's still in it. But realistically, it's over. And then Sunday morning rolled around. And Friday night, I'd been gaming with some friends. I lost track of time. Suddenly, I look at the clock. It's like 10:40. I'm like, shit. I put on qualifying. It seems that they're out there sliding around on wet weather tires, which all the more made me go, what the hell is happening? But just throughout the course of the weekend, I was busy and I hadn't actually gotten around to watch, even the highlights of that crazy qualifying session. All I caught was the very end of Q2 and Q3. So Sunday morning, pop onto YouTube to watch the highlights for that qualifying session. And my YouTube is just filled with posts about McLaren being disqualified. And I was like, no, surely not. This can't be real. And it was. So now it's still a week one. Now there's actually a chance in my...
Yeah, no, there's a real chance. It's within a race. And we're going to talk about what happened to the math. But I'm going to take a quote from one of what I think is one of the better shows in the last 10 years, HBO's Succession. If you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. And this quote just fits the situation perfectly, because the dad who has all of the gazillions is sitting across from his children, who are all aspiring to be in the seat that he's in. And he looks at them with the frankest of looks and goes, "You are not serious people." And an unforgivable blunder leaves both McLaren drivers out of the points, disqualified, while Max Verstappen is sitting across from you and piling on the pressure. And if that doesn't give you a harbinger of what's going to come a little bit later, now you know where we're going. All right. Well, we will rewind to that insane qualifying session. I was joking with you in the pre-show. I hope on a sports book somewhere in Las Vegas, there was a prop bet on somebody's board that said wet weather tires used at the Las Vegas GP in a real session. Because if you had not just the intermediates, but the full wets that everybody hates, they were the preferred tire in the desert. Unbelievable stuff going on Friday night. My jaw was on the floor throughout all of it. So we're going to recap the session. There's people in weird positions. Here we go. All right. Would not have figured this was going to be the poor guy who gets P20, but it happened. That was Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari P19. Well, we expect him to be down here, but not based on the practices. He was having a good weekend, and then the rain shattered it. Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. P18 was Gabby Bortoletto. P17 was Kimi Antonelli, although his weekend would drastically improve. P16 was Alex Albon, so that was your Q1 eliminations. Moving on to Q2, but going no farther. P15 was Franco Colapinto. P14, Ollie Behrman. P13, Esteban Ocon. P12 was Lance Stroll. P11, just missing out on the top 10, was Nico Hülkenberg. Your top 10 from 10 to 1. Pierre Gasly, Las Vegas specialist in the Alpine. I don't know what it is about this track. The Alpine comes alive in the cold, dark weather, in the cold, dark, and wet weather, apparently. So he was in the top 10. P10. P9 was Charles Leclerc. P8, Isaac Hadjar. P7, Fernando Alonso. P6, Liam Lawson. P5 was Oscar Piastri. That was the best he could muster. P4 was George Russell. P3, the other shocker of qualifying, Carlos Sainz in the Williams, humming that car really good in the wet. P2 was Max Verstappen. And in P1, and in almost going into the weekend, I would have said an improbable pole and a crazy lap that we're going to have to talk about. Not disqualified at this point, Lando Norris in the McLaren. All right. Well, did you eventually watch the whole qualifying, or what
Yes,
you
I
end
did.
up doing? All right.
Yeah, I did. And holy cow, that was a wild session. And I was not expecting Las Vegas to be a place where you would see full wets come out in a competitive session. It was nutty. When I first jumped on and I saw it, the first thing I see is someone sliding through the turn on full wets, and then seeing that everyone is on full wets. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it actually rained. And what's even more wild about all this is it's crazy. It's wet. Everyone's on full wets. They're not pitting. They're just going around doing lap after lap after lap. And we got through this without any red flags. In fact, the only person who crashed out of all this was Alex Albon, unfortunately. Loses it at the wrong spot and clips the wall, and just hits his car rebounding into the wall just in the right place to break his front suspension. So too bad for that. But the fact that everyone else made it through this and no red flags is really a good show of their skill. Another really weird thing that came out of this is the last place person on pace was Lewis Hamilton, which was really damning. Now, in a session like this, when you're going around and around and around and around, and really even in a regular qualifying session, you want to be the last person over the line, because the track is evolving.
Yep.
And the race line is drying out, and the times are just getting better and better and better. So in that position, you want to be the last driver over the line as qualifying is coming to a close, so you can get that last lap in when the track is at its best. Lewis Hamilton, I guess, I don't know if there was some miscommunication about his probability of making that, or something just happened and he didn't get there, but really he had a chance but didn't get there for getting that last lap in. And so he tumbles down the order and is in last place, but technicalities did not look good for him.
Yeah. He had two problems. One was the double yellow caused by Alex Albon's crash. Now, Alex Albon managed to get the car back to the pits, and they didn't shut down the whole track. They didn't bring out a red flag, obviously, or stop the clock. So that happens with about 45 seconds on the clock. Meanwhile, all the drivers are coming up and through. It's sector 3. It's the last sector. So if you're trying to set a lap, now you have to go through a double yellow flag section. Because the track was drying, you were still getting green sectors, even though the drivers were backing off through the double yellow section and still setting better times. That's how quickly it had started to change. And Lewis got to the line, had to go through the double yellow section, and thought he didn't make the line. He did, with apparently 2 or 1 second left on the clock, and his team did not tell him to do another lap. So he would have been in the preferred position of being the last guy, but he backed off in the first sector. And so that's the miscommunication that happened on that side. But it was a hairy session throughout. It was literally every lap that you'd go around, it felt like that driver was on higher ground compared to the times that were. So a lot, you would get a guy come up in P1 and then he would drop. And by the time everybody else got done, he'd be P14, P15, and have to set another lap to get back in it. So it was a crazy Q1. Lewis just found himself kind of on Lewis and Yuki, and basically everybody in Q3 were the ones kind of finding themselves on the outside looking in. Q2 was pretty much just as crazy, still on full wets. And then we got to Q3, and Q3 was the first time we saw the intermediates come back out, because everybody started on the intermediates except for, and full credit to these guys, the Aston Martins. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll went out on a set of full wets, and they were the ones out at the high ground early, and they were able to get the heat into them and make them work. But by the time we got back to Q3, the track had dried up. At least the line had been enough to where you were seeing inner tires. And it was kind of the same thing. Every time someone would go around, it would be another fastest lap time. And we get to the last two, and it's Max sets at what at that point had been the best lap. And I'm watching Lando's sectors, and Lando had an incredible first sector, an even better second sector. He was, I think, 8 or 9 tenths up, and then has a moment that reminded me of Saudi Arabia when Max was on the Fernando Alonso. Oh my God, look at this lap. And Max puts it in the wall. Lando had a very equal moment and somehow managed to save it. He thought he'd blown the lap, but he was so far up, he still managed to get into the 147s, the only driver to do it, and finishes basically 3 tenths up on Max. I thought, just re-looking at that lap, it was an incredible lap in those conditions. Those conditions were awful across the board.
Yeah. Really quick before we move on.
Yep.
I'm going to have a couple gripes about the TV direction throughout this episode. And the first one came during qualifying, where Max Verstappen was not having a really great qualifying, and then manages at the end there to put it on provisional pole for a moment until Lando had his lap. And they didn't show really any of his lap. And they didn't even show him coming across the line. Suddenly they're showing like an onboard of like Isaac Hadjar or something, Fine. Like, I got no problem with Isaac Hadjar, but show me the shit that's important and that I care about. And they weren't doing that. So suddenly they're talking about his lap and how good it is, and they're not showing any of it.
Yeah.
And he comes across the line and he's on provisional pole. I'm like, great. Would have loved to see it. Thanks. And yeah,
it's almost why it goes back to what I've been saying. I think the way that you're gonna, for fans like you and I who want to get all the stuff out of it and really see stuff, you almost got to watch with an onboard going on. Because the TV direction, there was a lot of communication issues with the Vegas circuit throughout the course of the weekend. We'll talk about something that happened actually in the race, really freaking dangerous, and we've talked about it before, but there were moments where teams had telemetry go out. There were issues with the onboards that we did have, where like every time it would go under an obstruction, it would cut out and then it would come back, and it looked like we were watching, no offense to the good people of Russia, but Russian television, with low bandwidth signal, and we couldn't figure out how to do it. And I get it. You're in the middle of a downtown. You got tall ass freaking casinos all around you. You got bright lights and flashy things. But this is our third go around. None of this should be new at this point. We should know how to do it. So I have a minor excuse because it's first time in the rain, but yeah, I mean, come on, you gotta understand where the storylines are. You gotta understand who we're looking for. If you don't see Piastri's, Verstappen's, and Lando's onboards when it's Q3, I don't know what you're supposed to be looking at. Unless someone else is setting purple sectors, I don't know what you're supposed to be watching at that point. That should be the story, and it was. Those were the three of the five fastest drivers out there. No offense to Carlos Sainz, who pulled up a great lap too. We should have been able to see some of that too. So, yeah, I get your gripe on that. But other people in places we wouldn't expect. Liam Lawson, great session for that. Isaac Hadjar getting in there. I think that's probably why he made it. And Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. You got to give a shout out to him. Those were some gnarly conditions, but we talk about the concept sometimes of stupid downforce being on here. I think that Alpine is a perfect example. That car has some stupid downforce, and the tires just light up better here than they do basically anywhere else. So good on you there. All right. Well, we will transition to Sunday. I don't know how we're supposed to cover this thing. Should we cover it how we saw it and then the thing after, or should we just talk about the thing after now?
I mean, they're here in the back markers because of this, so I think we should just rip off the Band-Aid.
Rip off the Band-Aid. All right. Well, approximately 4.5 hours after the checkered flag falls, we finally get notification after the entire process of the FIA doing its things. The skid wear on the two McLaren cars were found to be, according to the directive I read, I think it was Lando's was 0.11 millimeters too thin, and Oscar's was 0.29 millimeters too thin. So they were then therefore disqualified. So they were P2 and P4 respectively on the road, and all of the points are gone. We will talk about what we think happened when we kind of get to it. But your non-classified finishers on the road, finishing now in P18 is Lance Stroll, P17, Gabby Bortoleto, and P16 was Alex Albon. Your first classified finisher turns out to be P15 is Franco Colapinto. P14 was Liam Lawson, unable to convert the good qualifying. P13, this was kind of disappointing. Pierre Gasly not able to convert his good qualifying into points necessarily. Besides the two McLarens, any other thoughts here in the back markers?
Well, a couple of those guys are out because of shenanigans on the very first lap. Gabriel Bortoleto went into first turn really, really, really hot. Unfortunately, took out Lance Stroll and the craziness that happened there.
That looked like a green-on-green missile.
That was bad.
That.
We've given Gabriel Bortoleto a lot of credit for kind of showing a lot of skill this year and kind of being an unexpected good rookie, perhaps in some people's eyes. But yeah, that looked pretty bad. It was definitely a rookie mistake there. Liam Lawson had his own rookie mistake and ended up running into Oscar Piastri pretty well. That, fortunately for both of them, was like a wheel-on-wheel hit. So that absorbed a lot of the impact, and neither one of them was out of the race. So lucky for them, but
it did bust up Lawson's wing, and he had to come in and change it. So that kind of
I think that took a minute for it to finish braking. But yeah, he ended up having to come in. But they weren't out of the race, at least.
Right.
Unlike
Correct.
Bortoleto and Stroll, which were out of it right there at the very beginning. Alex Albon ends up having car issues, and they retired him later on in the race. Liam Lawson ends up down here in the back markers because of needing to recover from that incident. The Alpines not able, once the track was back to normal dry conditions, they were back to being underwhelming.
Yeah.
But yeah, big story here is the McLarens are out of it. I suppose as we move our way up into the field, get to the front runners, we can talk about how they actually were in the race. But like you said, the gist of it is that they had a plank wear issue that ended up disqualifying them from the race. I've seen a lot of commentary on how small the margins were that the plank was worn down past the limit by. But you got to remember, the plank starts out at 10 millimeters thick. The allowable amount for it to wear down is 1 millimeter down to 9 millimeters. So when you're talking about fractions of a millimeter, yeah, it's really tiny, but you're only allowed 1 millimeter change anyway. So if you're down below the limit by like 0.07, millimeters, that's a 7% error, that you've made. And in like, say, engineering, 7%, it's a pretty big margin. They definitely had made an issue, or made a mistake. I don't know exactly where in the weekend they realized that they were having a problem, because as you were describing to me earlier, they seemed to be talking in code over the radio about having an issue. They were talking about it as though it was a fuel issue during the race and that they needed to save on that. And we've seen real problems with that before, not very frequently, but I know a few years ago, Sebastian Vettel missed out on a podium because there wasn't enough fuel left in his car after the race finished to take the fuel sample. And that was a disqualification for him. So that could have been a very real issue. But that was a bit of a misleader, because we were all talking about that. And then it comes out that the McLarens are being reported to the stewards for a completely different reason. The skid wear, which we've seen disqualifications for much more recently.
Yeah. I mean, it comes out and look, I mean, I can maybe complain about the process, but the process is the process. It's the process that happens at the end of every race where, you get out, the driver gets out, goes to the podium or wherever they are, and the cars get dragged off, and the FIA does their thing. And usually about 90 minutes afterwards, the cars get released back. The people who want to do the celebratory photos go and do the celebratory photos. If you're a Sky customer in the UK there, and Ted Kravitz happens to be there, you get your 90 minutes of post-race and then a 30 minutes of what they call Ted's Notebook, where he goes through and kind of does a lot of kind of what we do when we're talking like this. This is kind of a expanded version of that. It's always kind of my inspiration for how to kind of program the show, is kind of what Ted does, but we're not there. We don't get to walk around and meet interesting people while we're talking about what happened. So we just kind of give you what happened. But anyway, that's usually like 2 hours after checkered flag. So if there is anything usually happening, tends to start right around that point. So we get to the end, and I'm watching or listening to the national broadcast, and the Speed City guys do a great job. They were there. They were actually on the PAs. They had the same team that was in Texas. Those were the guys that were out there. Johnny Green's got more energy than I don't know where he gets it from, man. I want to drink whatever coffee that dude has, because he's the Energizer Bunny that doesn't stop. And anytime you get a chance to listen to Bob Varsha talk about anything racing, do so. The dude is a legend. He taught me basically everything I know about Formula One. I hope one day to meet him and shake his hand and tell him that. That all having been said, at the very end, Chris Medland, who is one of the best journalists, sometimes you've seen him on F1 TV, comes in with 30 seconds left and goes, "There's a legality issue on Lando Norris's car." And because I have a very good relationship with all these people, the first thing Johnny Green said, "Well, Andy P just died." Because that's how they know me on that show. Because I talk to them. When I talk about the group chat, that's who I'm talking about most of the time. Kevin Kelly's also a member of that group chat. So we have our own little community within the community, and that's kind of my into the F1 media and how I can kind of get some of the insider information that I get. So I heard this, and it's 12:45, and I went, shit. But Chris Medland had qualified his comments. He goes, "I just heard potential." There hadn't been the FIA document string, and the FIA document string is usually pretty clear as to take you through when there's a problem. There's always a very specific order at which this has to happen. Joe Bauer, the technical director, has to issue at the end of each race. And 90% of the time, nobody reads this stuff. Most of the fans don't even know it exists. But there is a report that comes. There's 3 documents at the end that certifies the race goes official. There's a technical delegates report. There's the final classification issued by the FIA, and then a document that recaps both the drivers and the constructors' points, called championship points. The last document in any weekend is always championship points. So at that point, whatever they've done is what they've ruled on. And if anything is going to change, it takes an appeal, and we all know that process. We've talked about that process many times on the show. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole here. But at that point, when Chris Medland says there's a potential illegality issue, and he only mentioned Lando's car, and we also saw in the race, in the last maybe 4 laps of the race, Lando's 6 seconds or something behind Max in P2 and suddenly drops back. And he's losing around about 2 seconds a lap. And the pit wall is telling him, we have a good gap. We can afford to lift and coast in this corner, this corner, this corner. And he's like 7 of the 19 corners is where you can lift off. And meanwhile, George Russell's almost catching him, and Lando gets across the line. George Russell finishes about 3 seconds behind. So we all thought, because of what we heard on the radio, that it was really more fuel. Well, if you replay the entire gamut of team radio throughout the course of the race, you replace fuel with plank wear, a lot more of the messaging starts to come out, because it looked, even on the reconnaissance laps, that the McLarens were bottoming out, if you actually go back and rewatch all of that. So, but again, at this point, we only thought it was with Lando's car, and the natural assumption was the fuel. Ted's notebook comes on, he's talking, he's not mentioning it. I'm refreshing every bit of social media now that I can find to try to see, does anybody else have this? There's a string of usually how this goes. Nobody's got it. Okay, what's going on? Now we're about 10 minutes into Ted's notebook, and now he starts talking about it. So now I'm like, okay, this is more than passing rumor. This is actually real. The doors are up on the McLaren garage. They're not letting anybody else in. The rumor was that Nicholas Tombassis was in there, and he was talking, and they were trying to figure out what to do. But we still hadn't had the document chain. The only document that had come out was the provisional race classification. 2.5 hours later, you finally get the technical delegate summon Piastri and Norris. This is the first time anything had been mentioned about Piastri. Unable to verify skid wear, which now triggers a second thing that happens with the FIA that I'll talk about now. Whenever that happens, all that report says, my measurement didn't meet it. I refer you to the stewards. The next thing that happens is there is a meeting between the team, the stewards, and an independent measuring person who has to stand by, because they measure it in the presence of a representative from the team. The driver can be in the room. The FIA technical director is in the room. And all 3 stewards are in the room to see the independent measuring of this. And the team can then meet with the stewards and argue if there is some sort of force majeure argument that could be made. Usually, when we've seen it before, that could be maybe a half an hour to 45-minute meeting and it's done. This thing lasted 95 minutes. They went in at 11:15 or 11:45 local time, and we didn't get the final thing until 3. Now we're 2 hours behind. 3:45 a.m. local here.
They all smoking cigars while they're doing this, or what? So are they all smoking cigars while they're doing this?
I don't know, but meanwhile, there's a gaggle now of media. Everybody's reposting. And there's also, you also now, when something like this happens, you also realize how much of your F1 social media is all done by automatic, because the Formula One site is tweeting out, the podium and the Mickey Mouse and all that other stuff, like nothing's wrong. And then finally, now you're getting some independent, some American journalists who happen to be there. Jenna Fryer, there's the dude from Canada, Tim. He's always in the things when they're in this continent. I can't remember his name. He follows the show. I'm going to butcher his name, but Tim from Canada, I know who you are from TSN. He was not on talking about it. Jenna Fryer actually broke it, that said, I just talked to Zach Brown and he said both McLarens were disqualified. And then the documents came out in rapid succession. And what you read in the documents is basically a recap of the entire process. And they take you through, in multiple paragraphs, what happened, of what I just kind of said. And what the McLarens argued with was, they said, well, look, we weren't trying to do it. It was less than anyone else had done it before, which is kind of a BS argument, because it's either in or out. Doesn't really matter to me. I agree with that. But they said because of the weather, we didn't have a chance to properly calibrate the car. The second practice was all red flag. And oh, by the way, we lost telemetry on both cars, so we couldn't tell how bad it was wearing. The FIA concedes.
They measured the plank on everyone else in the top 10.
I know. The FIA basically said, well, we get that. We don't think you were doing it intentionally, but it's either in or out at the end of the day. You're outside of it. And in fact, the second measurement was worse than the one that Joe Bauer did that triggered the whole thing. So no real leg to stand on at that point. The penalty is accepted and the McLarens are formally disqualified. And then the documents all come out. So that was the process of what happened there. Not happy, obviously, as a fan. It led to a very sleepless and frustrating night. And then I was telling you, I said, I knew it was going to happen Sunday morning. I know I'm probably the only freaking idiot still awake watching all of this other than the people who were actually at the race tweeting about it. And I know what's going to happen is I'm going to get texts from you and other people who know me. And sure enough, within like the same hour, it was like, do-do-do. My phone just blew up and I'm like, I didn't really know what else to say. I like it. And we'll get to it when we get to awards. But like I said, you should never be in that position. I don't understand what decision was made to get your car even to in this jeopardy, given where you were in the championship. I could understand it if it was on the Oscar side. Why you did it to both cars is something beyond me. But I mean, apparently the new papaya rule is if we're going to all get disqualified, we have to do that together now too. But yeah, you just should never be in that position. End of story.
When I saw this news Sunday morning, I hadn't received any message from you. So I was wondering, I'm like, surely he knows because he knows all this stuff before I do. And he always waits for all the official documents to come out. But I wasn't 100% sure. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to poke the bear and see what happens. And, there's a little bit of a sadistic chord struck there too, because I was like, thinking like, oh, now he has to be stressed just like me over the last two races here. But yeah, I completely agree with you that McLaren should have never been anywhere close to this situation. It's a street race. The road is bumpy. The cars have a lot of issues with being run really down low for that maximum performance anyway. And they, no one else ran into this issue. From what I was reading, they tested the planks on top 10 finishers.
Yep.
At least. So
all of your championship protagonists, anyone who was away in the championship, even Russell, got measured.
So Lando was far enough out in front of both Oscar and Max here that he really just needed some points. Like, he didn't need to clinch it here. He just needed some points to keep it comfortable. Yeah, he could have, but he didn't need to. And he just needed some points to keep it comfortable. And I feel McLaren should have, thought about that and just said, you know what, we're not sure. We don't have enough data based on the way things have been going this weekend. We're going to just err on the side of caution. We're going to crank up the car a little bit and take the loss of performance. And if he finishes 5th or 6th or something like that, so be it. Max wins the race. He gains, like
it would have
15.
been plus 10. It would have been 32 if Lando finishes 5th.
Yeah. So, he would have made a gain on you, but it wouldn't have been a 25-point gain. We wouldn't be sitting here still seriously being like, does he have a chance? This ends up being somewhat of a blessing in disguise, ironically, for Oscar Piastri too, because he would have lost 6 points on Lando and said he loses no points on Lando. So I guess he can at least.
Well, we went from when the announcement first happens, we thought it was just Lando's car. So that would have. So you want to talk about permutations?
It would have really shaken things up.
It would have gone from 24 to 9 on Piastri if Piastri was to keep his points, and 24 on Max. And then it goes back to 24 on Piastri and Max. And in a bizarre twist, both McLarens getting disqualified meant that Lando's math technically really didn't change from the beginning of the weekend. So in an ironic way, it works out to where now it really becomes really simple. Lando needs to outscore both Oscar and Max by 2 points over the course of the next weekend, and it's kind of done, and then it is done. That having been said, it's a sprint weekend. It's Qatar. There's going to be curbs and planks and tires that might go pop,
that only last
that only going to be 25 laps.
Yeah.
So again, why are you even chasing? Like, you knew this track wasn't going to be your best. You all said it. I knew it. You could kind of tell in the first practice, and they came out in the second practice, and Lando was competitive, and I went, oh, okay. This is kind of weird. The second practice was very disrupted. Totally agree with that. But Lando ends up coming out on the top. And then you get to the third practice. And that was when the telemetry on the McLaren cars went out. And they didn't even run in basically the quali sim, the dry part, because it started wet and then ended up kind of dry. that proved to be not needed at all in terms of actual practicing, because then the deluge in the desert happens in those 2 hours between FP3 and qualifying, and we ended up in full wet tires. But I mean, I don't know what they were chasing. And there was no reason, especially on the Lando side, to chase that. I get trying to win it in style, and I've talked about, and when we get to awards, I will talk about this again. I mentioned it. I said, it is okay to win this thing ugly. Now you just got to win this thing however you got to do it, because your buffer is gone by your own doing. And the thing that pisses me off more about it than anything else is it wastes that incredible pole lap from Lando. That could have been the signature on a championship season. I would point to that lap, just like I would point to the Saudi Arabia lap for Max, even though it didn't end up working for him. Because I said that was the lap where I went, the guard might just be changing. The guard might have just been changing here, and they just blew it. All right, rant number 1 over. I'm sure that's not going to be the last one. But we'll move on now to the midfield that saw P12 with Yuki Tsunoda, P11 Fernando Alonso, P10 Haas, some important points for them in their fight. Haas takes advantage and gets 1 point with Ollie Behrman and 2 points for Esteban Ocon. First time Ocon has outscored Behrman in a long time. P8, rallying, I guess, from the back of the grid all the way up to P8 is Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. P7, probably the other unknown star of this race was Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber. There he is yet again. P6 turns out to be Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bull. P5 was Carlos Sainz in the Williams. A little bit of a slippage on his qualifying pace, but still a respectable result. And moving up to P4 is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And we'll just take you right through to the podium. P3, the big mover on the day. From P17, he ends up P3. Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. Thought he could win the race, but that was my prediction. That proved not quite to be the case. I thought after qualifying, I said, well, that prediction's dead. Not quite, almost, but not quite there. P2 is George Russell, but no one was in the same vicinity, even with the McLarens on the track of Max Verstappen. Even with Lando there, the closest he could get was approximately 5.5 seconds at one point. And then he just opened up the pace, and that was kind of the end of that chapter. So Max drives off with the victory in Vegas. The first driver to win 2 in Las Vegas. We can also talk about when Lando made the move on him at the first corner, and he at least listens to me and got his ass to the inside like I would have wanted, but he got way too to the inside and then drove his ass right off the circuit and allowed Max to kind of do what Max did, was to just wait him out and hello, open sesame, I drive through and goodbye.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look for Lando, in my opinion. And I applaud him for trying to be aggressive, because we've said so many times before that we want to see him be more aggressive and, make those kinds of moves and really fight for it. But he overdid it a little bit. It's not a very big run down to turn 1 here. And he, there's not a lot of room to get in front of a driver on your inside at that point. He did manage to get in front of Max, but that caused him to be in a poor position because he's way on the inside of the turn, maybe braked a little too late. And yeah, he goes off the track, leaves the door open for Max and then George Russell to get by. So a little bit of a clumsy start there. I don't know if he would have had it for the win, at that point anyway, but it definitely put him a little bit on the back foot to start. And then, yeah, like you said, from that point on, for Max, it was just managing the race. There was a little bit of a funny radio, maybe like 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the race, where they're telling Lando over his radio, like, yeah, we want you to get by Russell and go get Max. And GP comes over the radio and tells that to Max, and it cracks me up because right after that happens, the gap starts to open up a little bit to Lando, and I was like, oh yeah, he's just like, yeah, I'll show him.
It's even more instant on the timing, because then all of a sudden you just start seeing purple, sector 1, purple, sector 2. I'm like,
Max is sitting there going like, yeah, you come get me.
Yeah, pretty much. And Lando pre-DSQ probably had the pace for Russell. Russell got by him as a product of the move. And if we're not talking about a disqualification, I would have said that this would have played out a lot like it did Monza. Max was just playing out faster. The McLaren was at least holding its own. Now, it wasn't to the extent of like 20 seconds where like what Max did in Italy, where that car, you were not catching that car. There was nobody going to catch that car in that race, in that downforce setting. Here, at least, there were times where Lando could be competitive, but I never had the thought that unless Max's tires just fell off a cliff, which they did not, because, here comes the harder tire for the first time in a while. And in the cold conditions, that was the preferred race tire. And you could have probably just done the whole race on him. Kimi Antonelli basically did. And that's how he got all the way from P17 to P3. So because of that, our friend Tire Deg was nowhere to be seen, other than graining on the mediums. And then once everybody kind of got off the mediums, it became a pace race, and Max was just too fast, too good in that. So he was going to win no matter what. I wasn't even thinking about that. I would have said, yeah, that's a win ugly move. Get over P2 would have been fine. And then 2 hours later, we all knew now what happened. But up until that point, I don't think anybody had the pace for Max. He was going to win this no matter what.
Kind of wonder if George Russell maybe could have. He was hanging with Max there for a little while at the beginning of the race, and then
he cooked his set of mediums bad.
Yes, and Max made the mediums last longer than anybody. He made it all the way lap 25, I think, before he had to pit for the hards, and hards definitely seemed to be the preferred tire, like you said. Kimi Antonelli made him last practically the whole race. George Russell inherits that P2. He had to manage his own problems throughout that race. He seemed to be having problems with his steering that he kept commenting on throughout the race, and when Lando caught up to him in that last stint, came over the radio and said, look, like, I'll do what I can, but I don't think I've got it, in so many words, and pretty much didn't really fight Lando, which ended up working out for him because he got it back anyway.
Right.
But yeah, the big story there is Kimi Antonelli fighting from the back, pits very, very early on to go onto the hard tires, ends up getting the track position from doing that over the other drivers, namely Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri, who couldn't get by him at the end of the race. He had a 5-second penalty due to a false start, which was very minor. If you watch the replays on it, he pretty much just ends up rolling the tiniest amount forward right before the lights go out, which, we talked about tiny margins. It counts. So the Kimi Antonelli gets that 5-second penalty, unfortunately. But he fights so hard there at the end that Oscar Piastri can't get by him. Because of that, Charles Leclerc can't get by Oscar Piastri because they're pretty much in like a little mini DRS train at that point. Kimi opens it up enough to Charles Leclerc that he stays in front of Charles after the penalty by, I think it was like 0.19 seconds or something like that, a really small margin there. So it ends up being that Charles misses out on a podium by that amount because of the McLarens getting disqualified.
The Antonelli defense is amazing because he had Piastri pre-DSQ in his DRS for a significant portion of the second half of that race. And that is also why I think we see Piastri's plank wear deg worse than Lando's, because there was no opportunity to tell Oscar to back down or attempt to manage it or do anything, because he was literally within DRS lap after lap after lap trying to get a pass done. That just didn't happen. And yeah, I mean, but still managed to open up that gap by just enough. Again, this is a game. This is Formula One. This is the game of small things have big consequences. Little books have big consequences. I always say the sporting regs is the big book with the little consequences, and the technical directives are the little tiny book with the large consequences. And that's pretty much what we saw here on display. All right. Any other thoughts on the race before we take a quick break?
Just a small one for Carlos Sainz, who managed to finish in 5th place. Great finish for him. Big points for Williams there. And considering Alex Albon had a pretty rough weekend, it's good that at least Williams got points on the other side of the garage. I really didn't think he was going to be able to hold on to much with where he qualified. He qualified so well in the wet, and I was like, yeah, that's really cool, but
we weren't sure whether or not he was going to keep it because he was under investigation for
Right.
the incident with, I think it was Lance Stroll. He had spun out in the mega wet of Q1 and was in one of those runoff areas and he had managed to do the 360 and get the car pointed the right way, but he's actually pointing going backwards on the track. And meanwhile, Lance Stroll had come into the same mini sector and was on a hot lap and was trying to get past and, had slowed down for the double yellows, obviously. But meanwhile, here comes Carlos, and they were almost to a point where they were almost facing each other, which is not a situation you want to have. But I think the stewards were trying to be a little bit more lenient given how epically wet it was and how no one was expecting that. And they ultimately decided no further action on that for Sainz. We left qualifying almost sure. I almost thought that's a great lap. He's might get a grid drop, but luckily that for him, it did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, so leaveth the Las Vegas GP. They blew off more fireworks. I think I texted you. I think they're trying to beat out the Saudis, trying to beat off the number of fireworks. There is the collaboration with Disney that's going to come out later on. So we had Mickey Mouse doing things with the Vegas River and pink Cadillacs, which I thought was interesting for the podium. And, the whole thing, it was just kind of like, okay, let's kind of get on with it at some point. And then eventually, I don't know where they took the drivers to, but I think the drivers basically did another parade lap for the podium and then had to come back to actually get the trophies. And just a lot of pomp and circumstance, but that's what you would come to expect in Las Vegas, I suppose.
It was. I thought the Mickey Mouse doing the fountain show a little over the top, in my opinion. But I suppose if Disney's going to be paying for this stuff, they want to have their show. The pink Lego car, I thought that was actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. And the glasses that they got to wear in the car, those were kind of fun too. But
the shot of Max.
It did take a long time to actually get to the podium ceremony.
Yes. The shot of Max with the glasses on is already turned into a meme if you're out and about anywhere on any sort of social media. So that's actually pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, so endeth the Vegas GP. The strip goes back into the hands of the people. Everybody who's been bitching and moaning about the build can now stop and go back and talk about the rest of the stuff that goes on in Las Vegas. No announcement on a renewal yet was something that I thought was actually kind of interesting, although they did make it a point of saying that the race sold out. And notice they didn't give a number. So I don't know what that means. So that was very confusing.
I thought that too. Normally when they do the attendance, they give you an actual number of how many people are there. And it did seem a little suspect that they're just being like, oh, it's sold out. But what does sold out actually mean? How many tickets did you
Did you have a section open and then close it and then said, never mind these 5,000 seats? What we sold was sold out. So I don't know. We'll see what the future holds and where this happens with the calendar. So, I would say, I think as an event, the feedback that I've heard, at least from the people who I know who were there, seem to say that the pomp and circumstance, other than the Mickey thing at the end, most of the pomp and circumstances didn't dial down. It felt more like a regular race with a regular weekend. I think the moving of it up 2 hours helped the U.S. audience a lot. Mm-hmm. It probably helped the international audience, maybe not so much because, 440 something for the UK. Sorry, but we have to do it for Japan and Malaysia and all those other places when they go to weird places. So, I don't really know that I have a big opinion on, the venue. It looks like it should be cool. What I would do if I were running the world and could actually control things for 10 minutes, I would swap the Coda slot and the Vegas slot 1 for 1, because to do Texas when it's cooler would help. I know you and me out quite a bit, and I think would help that experience for people a lot more. And I think you want to have more warmth in the desert, 95 degrees warm, but enough warmth in the desert to where you can have a traditional, it doesn't need to look like the tires need 8 laps to warm up before they start to do anything. So I don't know that they'll ever make that happen, but if I were running the world and could actually pick the two, that's what I would swap, but that's me. All right, well, we'll leave the Las Vegas GP here. We'll come back. We'll recap what all of this did to the points in the drivers and in the constructors. We'll open it up to your thoughts on the weekend in the fan email segment. We'll hand out some awards. You want to stay tuned for the rubbish. I guarantee you, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm sure it's going to be red-faced on my side. We'll talk about some predictions. Someone had a really good weekend this time out, and someone didn't. We'll talk about that. And then we'll preview, as these are triple header, man, coming at us thick and fast. No time to lick the wounds on my side. We got to reset, re-rack, and go, baby, because Qatar is coming. So we will talk about that in just a little bit. Come on back. You will not want to miss that.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back on in. This is Season 7, Episode 43 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Las Vegas GP review show. I am not playing any more Las Vegas sound because apparently YouTube didn't like it.
Is that so?
So on the preview, there were two versions. There was the original one, which maybe if you got it, had all the sound in it. And if you didn't get it, it's because YouTube didn't like it. So there was the YouTube-friendly version. The other thing is...
We're just awkwardly sitting there dancing to music.
Oh, no, I edited
there.
that whole... It was actually a hell of an edit. I actually took that whole thing out. No, because I wanted to have it in there because you were dancing and I was dancing to it. But no, sadly, that's in the blooper reel. But anyway, there was the version that went out. It's out there. You can hear it with the sound if you want. But anyway, we were talking about the Las Vegas GP. We've recapped what happened in the race. We've recapped what happened several hours after the race as well. So what does this do to all of the point standings? We have a much tighter race in the drivers, and the constructors have also had some changes to it. The certain teams certainly shining at the right times. So Cody, if you take the drivers, as always, I will handle the teams.
So the double McLaren disqualification this weekend means that neither Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri come out with any points added to the tally here. So Lando Norris still in first place, still sitting at 390 points, and Oscar Piastri still in second, still at 366 points. But what this means is that Max made the greatest gain possible that he could this weekend. So Max Verstappen is still in third place, but he is now up to 366 points as well. He is behind Oscar Piastri on Cutback because Oscar has more wins so far on the season. But they are tied on points, and they are both just 24 points behind Lando Norris. This is a long shot, but it is a gap that can be closed. Sebastian Vettel did it in 2010, closed 25 points in 2 races. If we adjust the point system, I was reading that the comeback Kimi Räikkönen made in 2007 over the last 2 races was actually even greater than that. As we said, still a chance. George Russell, 4th place after inheriting that 2nd place finish. If you hear a rumbling, it's my cats chasing each other around the living room. George Russell, 4th place for Mercedes, 294 points.
They're pissed that he's mathematically eliminated. That's what they're all upset about.
Yep. Charles Leclerc manages to actually get some pretty good points out of the weekend, but just missed out on that podium coming his way. Charles is in 5th place for Ferrari at 226 points. Lewis Hamilton actually had, a decent comeback considering he started in last place, ended up inheriting 8th place for a few points to bring him up to 152. Kimi Antonelli, who we said great drive, especially considering his starting position and his penalty, manages to inherit that 3rd place podium. He's in 7th for Mercedes at 137 points. Alex Albon on the opposite end of that weekend, only big crash in qualifying, has to retire from the race, but he is still in 8th place for Williams at 73 points. Isaac Hadjar gets a few points this time out. He's in 9th place. Racing Bulls at 51 points, and he is just 2 points ahead of Nico Hulkenberg, holding on to 10th place for Kick Sauber at 49.
Yeah, back into that top 10 comes Nico Hulkenberg just when he needs it. It's amazing how he's managed to score. When he's managed to score it, he's had quite the year for a guy who we all kind of wrote off He's having quite a resurgence to his career. It's good to see. As for the constructors, despite the fact of the double DSQ, they still will not be caught in the constructors. That is McLaren. They remain, however, on 756 points. P2, the inheritors of the big points on the weekend, other than Max, would be Mercedes. So they are up to 431 points. That helps their P2 standing a lot because P3 is now Red Bull. They are up to 391. The big kind of losers in all of this P2 fight is now Ferrari. They are still up. They score points, but not what they would have liked to, given what we thought coming into the weekend. But they are up to 378 points. P5 will be Williams. I've been saying that for a very long time. They look pretty much locked into that. They are up to 121 points on the strength of Carlos Sainz's finish. That pretty much, I think, probably locks them in there. P6 is Racing Bulls. They check in now with 90 points with good form from both Hadjar and Lawson in the second half. P7, not going away without a fight for sure, is Haas. They continue to score points. Maybe the P6 is maybe a little bit out of their reach now with only 2 events left, but who knows? It's a sprint weekend. A lot of things could happen. But they are on 73 points, 1 solitary point in front of P8 Aston Martin, who have kind of fallen down this table a little bit, but still scoring points. And Fernando Alonso still dragging that car where he can. Focus definitely for them is next year, though. So they are up to 72 points. 9, Kick Sauber, do not count them out. They are not out of this discussion either. They could definitely rally if they do another shock thing in the last couple of rounds. And Nico Hulkenberg's been doing some shock qualifying in his sprint weekend, and he's been doing great in the sprints this year too. So nothing is out of possibility there. They could still mathematically finish as high as P6 in the constructors, but they are up to 68 points. And P10, no points on this weekend, but at least they were competitive, at least for most of the weekend. Alpine, but they remain on 22 points. All right. Well, I understand that this was a tough race to watch if you were in the UK. And I salute our one emailer for getting up at the crack of dawn and setting her alarm. And I think sticking with the entire investigation just about as long as I did. I don't know what you did to pass the time, Rachel, but I got through like 2 different podcast interviews of an hour and a half watching YouTube while we were waiting for the inevitable axe to fall. But Rachel Fleming is our sole emailer for this weekend. So Cody, what does she have to say?
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for your email. And Rachel says, well, that was pretty good. I never really thought McLaren would have the pace here. So for Lando to get second is pretty good. Over a race win in front, this could be over next weekend in Qatar. I'm sure we're going to get some change in sentiment there in a second. But what a job Kimi did for Mercedes. He gave George that podium and got a deserved point finish. Alonso watched some good overtakes, but Aston didn't really have the pace again, so no points. Sauber watch, Hulkenberg points, and kept Hamilton behind, which is really impressive. Very poor from Gabriel, though. Terrible start, and took himself and Stroll out. And about 15 hours later, it's a double DSQ for the McLarens. Max and Oscar, 24 points behind Lando. Lando can still win the championship in Qatar, but it's more than likely it's going to go down to the wire. Now, it is really close where the championship's going to get decided. Obviously, with the way the points stand, Lando is still the clear favorite. He could very easily wrap it up in Qatar if he manages to come out of it more than 25 points ahead of Oscar and Max. So he only really needs to gain 2 points on the 2 of them over the course of next race. You know, it's crazy here, and it could come down to him being 24 points in front, and you know that's got to get decided in Abu Dhabi. For the sake of entertainment, I really hope it goes down to the last race. It does kind of get to be a little bit of a weird feeling when you get to those last few races and the championship's already decided and you're like, this is just kind of for fun for the front, at least at this point. But more than that, I hope it comes down to the last race because that would mean Max is still in it. And I am here for that. I'll be happy if Lando wins the championship, but I'll be happier if Max takes it.
You know, I want this over in Qatar.
I know.
My heart can't stand this. I really do not want to go through an Abu Dhabi I remember the last decider in Abu Dhabi, and that was the one that shall not be named, because every time you talk about it, weird things happen to you on social media if you are ever mention it. I don't need a Nicholas Latifi. I don't need something weird happening with 4 laps to go that creates an opportunity for weirdness. So I would very much like to have this done in Qatar. I don't think we're going to get there, though. My thought is I think it will suit the McLaren car better. So, I mean, here's the good news. McLaren fans, take a deep breath. You're done with Vegas. You're done with the low downforce tracks. You're going to 2 tracks that suit your car really well. You designed this car for these 2 races. So that's the good news. The bad news is Max's car is still good. That's the tough part of this. So you're going to have to fight. And I don't care how you win this thing. If you got to win it ugly, win it ugly. If Max wins the next race and Lando comes home second, you better fucking come home second. That's kind of the minimum now. And you cannot take each other out in the damn sprint. You've got to get through this sprint with no problems, because that could just be a tipper off of Lord only knows what could happen. So it's got to be clean. Execution's got to be there. Pit stop's got to be good. All that now, because your buffer's gone. This is what committing ritual suicide looks like. Mm-hmm. You got to really watch it now, because there's all this other crap now that could come into play when if it happened next weekend, you really didn't have to really care. You would have been up by 30 some points and you would have said, okay, maybe one of them's in contention at the last race, or maybe it doesn't even matter. But it got a lot harder. And for once, for anybody who wants to critique Lando, I'm all there for you. I get it. Sometimes he's very high, very low. This ain't on him, bro. This ain't on him. Team let him down.
No, Lando did everything he needed to do. He had a great qualifying run. He had a great race, other than, the very beginning of lap 1. And yeah, he did everything he needed to do. And I actually came out of that race feeling like, okay, like Max won this race. In my opinion, it was probably the last race that he was maybe favored to win this season. And it's like, okay, he got it. That's fun. But the championship is practically over. Like I can be happy with this. And then when I saw the McLarens had been disqualified, it was kind of this weird bittersweet feeling of like, okay, great. He's still in it more than he was before by a long shot, but now I have to be stressed out for the next race. So yeah, now I have to, do some voodoo rituals to help him get a few points up on the McLarens in this next race. But it's definitely gone in a much different direction the second half of this season than I ever would have thought it would have, because going into the summer break, I thought for sure Oscar Piastri had this in the bag, and now he's on the outside looking in. It could actually, I would say, even more likely than Max getting eliminated after Qatar. It looks like Oscar could be eliminated quite easily after Qatar, and that might actually be
my guess is one of them will. My guess is one of them will.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure which one, but I would bet I know where the betting public is going to be at.
I mean, obviously, McLaren would prefer Max to be eliminated. But even if Oscar is eliminated, that wouldn't be the worst thing for them, because at least then they can say, you are mathematically out of it now. We have no reason to not prefer
right.
Lando on strategy and setup.
The papaya rules can get shelved for whatever that is or whatever it isn't. It can go on the shelf, and we know what everyone's going to do. And Oscar, if they need Oscar to play rear gunner, he'll do it, and that'll kind of be it, because he'll have a week to shake it off. Just how our luck sends to go probably doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but I don't know what the hell's going to happen now.
Now this is just, spitballing, brainstorming, daydreaming, whatever you want to call it. How awesome would it be if Lando Norris retired from the next race and Max and Oscar were all within a race win of getting there? It would be so fun. You three-way fight at the end. Wow, we haven't seen that in a long time.
I'm buying a thing of Valium if that's happening, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to read the race result, and then I'll watch the race, because I don't know that I'll be able to stand it. It's going to be a stressful watch. I mean, this race was a stressful watch, but especially when all of a sudden Lando pulls up and you don't really know why. And then you obviously find out why and what it all means and everything like that. And we're going to get to the next part. I even seriously thought about not even wearing the colors tonight, because I didn't know if that was appropriate. I didn't know what I should do. And I come back to what I've always said. I said, if I'm going to ride this roller coaster, I got to ride it. And you say you want to be up here in the thin air of the top of the table, then you gotta be here for it. So Yeah, I mean, I would watch it. I would do the same thing that I always do. I'll do my same thing. Don't talk to me an hour before the race starts. I will only be able to, I know what will happen. I will only be able to drink water. I will not be able to eat until 3 hours after the race ends. That's what will happen. But, and as I told somebody in the 8 texts that I got Sunday morning, and I said, yeah, I was up till 4 a.m. And this is what I do for fun. You can only imagine what I do when in my real life for work and what I do for that. Wow. So yeah, it would be a thing. It would be a thing. It would probably rival the global audience of the Lewis v. Max 2021 thing, which I think was one of the most, other than maybe some World Cup finals on a global scale, one of the most watched events ever. You got to think that somewhere Stefano Domenicali is sitting in a corner just going, excellent, excellent. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
Bring more viewers.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Rachel, for your thoughts. Thank you for sticking. First of all, Rachel, thank you for sticking with us, for waking up at 3 a.m. and actually responding on social media to my stuff that I did put out. So that was really cool of you to do that. It's nice to know that we have people who get up because we're here. And I don't know, she probably would have gotten up anyway, but the fact that she did and interacted with us was even so much the better. So thank you, Rachel, and bless you for waking up that early. All right. It is time for the awards. It is time for the Rubbish Award. Cody, I'll let you go first. I know I've got something coming, but I think we're all fairly obvious where this one's going. But anyway, what you got?
Yep. This is gonna go to McLaren. We discussed it at length. It's because they were sitting really pretty going into this weekend. Lando still has, really, one hand on the championship trophy, but he could have had it all but in the bag. Had McLaren played it a little more safe, they decided that they were going to go for it all and came back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously in the same boat you are. That's where my award will go. And like I was saying, I debated whether or not I would take the colors off for tonight because one was just like, I love the team, but that doesn't mean that I have to like them all the time. And right now I really, really don't like them.
Yeah, but it's not like Lando punched a baby or something. He just had a bad weekend.
No. And I'm not blaming the drivers, and I'm not like it's. I don't know I don't know how to feel, and I don't know how. Like, should I be pissed? Should I just be I feel like at the end of the day, I'm just disappointed.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Right, because it's like, look, for so long, go back to. Let's rewind the clock to 10 years ago, 2015, when that car, the first year of the Honda engine, they scored 29 points. They were the back of the thing. They were getting laughed at across everything. The Honda engine kept breaking. Fernando Alonso kept coming up with new and fun radio transmissions, EP2 engine this and all that other stuff. And you lived through that. And over the course of 10 years, you built this thing up to not only take the constructors last year, which was not anything that I thought was ever possible, but now to finally see the plan was always this year. It was always this year. This was supposed to be the capstone, the final thing. And you're in the position, and your entire philosophy up to this point, and sometimes I've even criticized you for it, was, why are you worried about who's behind you? Just focus on forward. And now you decide to go uber aggressive at a place that doesn't suit your car? What? Why? Now? How? What? You gotta be kidding me. This is what happens. And it was clear you knew something was wrong. And there's reporting out there that said Lando was talking about it after FP2, and I don't know how much they heeded it or how much they didn't. 5th place would have been fine here. For once, I would have agreed with. Carry about who's behind you. You could let Max go driving off into the Nevada sunset and it wouldn't have mattered. And instead, now we're here and I have to play this.
But you did not hear my words. And now it's come to this.
Because I talked about it. That 4 rounds ago, after Coda, I said, it's okay if you win this thing ugly. You don't have to win it with the signature win at the end. The points are the points. Hell, Max won one championship of his. He didn't even realize it in Japan. He got all the way to the cool-down room. He didn't even know he'd won it. Somebody had to tell him because they had to recalculate the finishing order twice. It doesn't matter how you win it. It's that you win it. You got 2 rounds to go. These should suit your car. You got to do it. You got to go out and take it. It's not going to be given to you. No one is going to give it to you, at least of all Max.
Yeah. They wanted to recreate what happened last year where Max won it big in Vegas and was half in the bag on gin and tonics while he was still doing interviews. So they're just going to have to settle for getting it done dirty, like you said.
Well, and the kicker of it will be if whoever wins the championship is not going to have a champagne shower. They will have a rosewater shower because of where we're going. True.
I mean, hell, if I was
I don't think any of them will
take
care.
a rosewater shower.
Right. I don't think that really matters. It just was a thought that popped into my head there. But anyway, McLaren, do better, please. My heart can't stand this. Thank you. Good night. Yay. Thanks. All right. We'll move on to analysis paralysis. I'll let you go first here. What you got?
My analysis paralysis is that F1 continues to have a TV direction problem. And I really, really hate that I keep having to bring this up because it shouldn't be an issue. They have this very, very popular sport that is becoming more and more popular here. And I feel like the TV direction has just gotten worse over the years. And my kitty is eating my tiny Max Verstappen. Maybe don't do that, please. Yeah. If anybody likes Legos, I have the tiniest version of Max Verstappen now to accompany my medium-sized Lego Max Verstappen. Fortunately, my kitty thinks it's a chew toy. Anyway, TV direction problem for Formula One. I already described what was making me upset about qualifying, where they weren't showing drivers who actually stood to qualify at the front of the field on their final laps, where, they maybe hadn't been having a great qualifying, but they missed some good stuff during the race as well. For one thing, when Max took his pit stop, it was pretty close coming out in front of George Russell. He did not have the fastest stop. I think it was like a 3-second stop. He came out pretty close in front of Russell. And what annoyed me about all this is you knew right away that the direction was wrong because the commentators were talking about how close it was between Verstappen and Russell. And that's not what they were showing on the broadcast. They were showing something, I don't even know what it was, something completely different. But that's not what the broadcasters were talking about. So you know that they had it wrong there. And then at the end, Lando Norris is backing way off. And the gap was increasing pretty rapidly. Like, I know you said it was like a couple seconds a lap. That's
so by the end, it was like 4 or 5.
Yeah, he was really backing off in those last couple laps. And it's to the point where we thought, like, maybe he's got a problem. We ran into this before where, it wasn't quite as dramatic as Lewis Hamilton's brakes failing and him having to cut corners to get to the end of the race and all that. But it's still a pretty big deal, especially if you weren't 100% sure what was happening. And would have loved to see some of that on the broadcast. You cut to that. You show him having trouble, show him backing off, show George Russell catching up to him, because by the time they got over the line, it was pretty close. Just have a couple shots of seeing him catch up for the drama of it. And then when Max is about to come back to the line, then you cut over to him winning the race. It's just really bad. And I really feel like the people who are deciding the TV direction don't watch Formula One. That's what it feels like. And that, to me, makes no sense. I would love to go in there and do it for you. I'm a huge fan. I know it's a lot.
And it's one of the things, and I've heard thoughts about this, and I don't know if it's something that's in the cards for the future. We know where the U.S. rights are going. We know that they're going to Apple TV, and you almost wonder if there are going to be, I think one of the things that they've run into is they have the international broadcast, which is basically the Sky people who are talking about one thing. And then you have the F1 TV folks who are talking sometimes about other things. So I think sometimes where those discussions go are not always the same.
But I saw both broadcasts this time.
Okay.
And they were both talking about
both doing it.
The broadcast was not where it should have been.
Then there's somebody in the truck who, we need to find and educate, maybe. But yeah, I mean, the thought is, and where I was going with this was that potentially with Apple TV, you could have alternate actual feeds where it's not, maybe there's one that's just focused on the midfield. Maybe there's a feed that's focused on the top 3 throughout the whole race. And you get overlay the international commentary and they're talking about what they're talking about, but you're going to watch the top 3. Or there's a split screen where you can watch, there's just dedicated cameras that cover that. There's a lot of possibilities. I don't know if any of it's practical. I'm sure what I'm saying probably cost zillions of dollars, but fuck it. It's Formula One. Why not? So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm hoping eventually comes out of it, or you can self-direct a little bit more of what you have, because the app, the F1 TV app is good, but it's hard to do that. There's multi-view and it works, but it's hard to toggle throughout that. And granted, the Apple interface is actually pretty good, and I like it on my iPad, but it's hard to manage just for me. So I have my 2 onboards and my timing screen, and I'm really, the main feed for me is almost secondary. It's almost the last thing I'm really looking at, because most of the time I'm watching the onboards, I'm watching the timing. But yeah, I mean, to your point, if that's all you're seeing, yeah, you're missing it. You're missing parts of it for sure. All right. Mine is going to go out to the FIA, and no, this has nothing to do with the McLaren's DSQ or any of the process with that. That was actually all above board and handled correctly according to all of the rules and all the research that I did. But what we have is a marshal on track problem, and we have a race director communication problem to the marshals. And this is not the first time we saw it. We saw it creep up in Mexico and that was only one car. That was Liam Lawson with 2 marshals. And that was close enough, way too freaking close. We talked about it then. The end of lap 2, or whatever it was before they threw the virtual safety car, there are 20 cars coming at racing speed into a corner, and I saw 7, 8 marshals on the track trying to clear debris off. Literally, 1, they were all probably crapping their pants, and I totally understand that. And 2, they're trying to get their asses off the track as quickly as possible. Somebody dropped the ball there. Somebody's ass deserves to get fired for that. This is the second time, and this one felt a lot worse. And the double yellows may not do it next time, man. You got to be really careful. We got to protect these people. These people are volunteers. They what make this thing happen. We do not want to see a death of a marshal for no good reason.
Yeah, we were one car mistake away from a whole bunch of cars, mind you. We were one mistake away from going bowling with marshals.
Yeah.
And it's happening too frequently. Like this is the second time we've talked about this in like 3 race weekends. So yeah, they definitely need to get this figured out. If you're going to be putting marshals out on the track, the show be damned for 5 minutes. Just call the virtual safety car.
What it's there for.
You don't have to call a full safety car. At least just bring them out of racing speed. The virtual safety car is there to keep the status quo, but slow everybody down for shit like this. Just do it, and move them out of the way when the cars come around. They can go back out there. It's okay. The show will go on. We don't want to hurt anybody over it.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. You said it perfect. All right. We'll move on to Dark Horse of the Day. I'm going to give mine to Kimi Antonelli, who I thought had, all zeros on his jackpot, and then won it again. Goes from P17 to P3. Great drive. Holding off Oscar Piastri, who was at the time still in championship contention behind him. A great defense there. Very worthy podium. Kimi Antonelli, hell of a drive, man. Proving Toto Wolff very correct. That's a team. I say it all the time about Williams just because they've been at the 26 regulations for so long, but don't you blink on Mercedes. They have probably the preferred power unit, and they like it when it's a power unit formula. They could be something to watch. That's a guy to watch next year for sure.
I definitely agree. This was a good race weekend to display that Antonelli has that resilience to bounce back, because he had very poor qualifying. He had a penalty literally in the first microseconds of the race. Like, it was a rough one. And he could have just, gone through that race steaming, making mistakes, being like, God, this just isn't my weekend. But, he took the alternate strategy. It worked out. He did everything he had to do, holding off the drivers behind him, trying to maximize what he could despite having the penalty. And, he got from 17th place to a podium with a little help from his friends in Papaya. But it counts. The records will show that he had a podium, and I think it was well-deserved.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see the social media of the trophy moving from one garage to another. Sometimes they do that in these types of cases. Or whoever was P3, or Russell handing it to Antonelli, or them swapping it, or I don't know. I'm sure someone will come up with something about that, maybe when they get to Qatar. But anyway, we'll move on to driver of the day. I think we have unanimity here. I'm going to give this one to Max Verstappen. I would have given it to him anyway, DSQ notwithstanding, he was the best in the race, the best on the race pace for sure. Great drive for him. Controlled the pace when he needed to, opened it up when he wanted to. Can't really say much more other than that. I tip my cap, sir. Good job, Max. And pressure's on McLaren because of it.
Yep, I agree with you here. It's going to go to Max. It seems like more often than not, especially this year, that you give Max a sniff and he gets into the lead there. There's no turning back. It's really hard to get back around him just because how aggressive he can be. And yeah, he is in some top-notch form at the moment, despite the fact that, his championship chances are still not great. This was his 8th consecutive podium. He's had like 4 wins, I think, in that stretch. 3 wins, 4 wins. He's had a really good run. It is really kind of a shame that they started off the year so much more roughly, because we could have really had a championship down to the wire already at this point, which would have made things just so much more exciting and so much worse for Andy's health. But
I would have had more time to come into it. It's the
true.
Sudden shock of the thing, of you thinking you're in one place mentally and about ready to sign off and go to bed, and 30 seconds, here comes Chris Medlin saying there's a problem. And it was, I think the room went dark for a minute, and then it came back to me, and I'm like, because it felt like, I'll just be honest with you, it felt like a slow slog to death. And it was just like, you know what, if you're going to kick him out, just publish the damn document and kick him out. And then when it was taking so long, like even the Speed City guys were tweeting like, what could be going on? And my response was probably one hell of an argument.
I was about to say it's Stella
and Zach Brown and everybody else trying to come up with whatever they could. They got lawyers. They don't have lawyers there, other than the one time I know Mercedes had a barrister there for 2021. They've got lawyers on standby. It's morning in the UK, so they could have easily had people that they were, trying to figure out what to do. And I'm sure they gave the FIA all they could to try to potentially wiggle themselves out of it. And the fact that it took as long meant that the FIA thought about it at least for a half a minute, which surprises the hell out of me. But you knew at the end what was going to come down, and lo and behold, it did. So
it's clear cut. Number 2 small.
Yep, that's true. Again, little book, big consequences. All right. Well, sir, your predictions were on point this weekend. I may have taken the prediction trophy, but not this weekend. You get the Vegas one by more than a little bit. You got 6 points on the weekend, so well done. You got P1 on the podium. Orlando getting DSQ'd gives you P2 on the podium. You got the quali lap time, even though we were both really close. You were slower, so you were 15.4 seconds off. I was 15.7 seconds off, but you get the quali time point for that. You also get the fastest lap time point. You were closer to me. You got P11 on the bonus pick because of how that shifts, and the prop bet. So I only score a scant only 1 point. Thank God for the prop bet, where I thought, okay, well, that's an easy one. At least I won't get a duck. Otherwise, I would have scored 0. But you eat into my lead a little bit. I'm still up 12-7 on the season. All right. Well, so endeth the Las Vegas GP, and the good, the bad, and a lot of a little ugly, at least on my side of it for sure. But we will reset, re-rack. We got no time to lick our wounds, guys. Everybody got to pack up. We're headed to the Mideast. We're headed to Qatar. We know it's a sprint weekend. We know we got weird-ass tire rules. So here we go. Championship in the balance. I don't know exactly we're going to do a preview. Are we around Wednesday? Because we have a holiday this week in the United States that's just going to throw all of this into chaos. So we may not get to a preview. I'm not sure. We're going to try, but it's going to be tough because we have the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States, and then we have the biggest shopping day of the year, which is Black Friday. So we may not get to a recording before then. If we don't, we're sorry. We will definitely be back next weekend for sure to recap Qatar, particularly if the championship happens, whatever happens, whether it's decided, whether it goes on, we'll be here for it, but we'll do our best for that. Cody, any final thoughts on this weekend or maybe what's to come?
Just looking forward to it continuing to go down to the wire. I'm just happy that it's not settled yet, which I know is the opposite of what you're hoping for, but it keeps it more exciting.
I'll take my antacid and I'll be fine. I'll make it work.
We've talked many times about how, in Formula One, there's a lot more battles going on than just what's at the front. And there's still a lot to decide in the Constructors' Championship for, those bottom half of positions, which really mean, big differences in money for these teams. A lot of drivers very close to each other in the standings there as well. So there's still stuff to play for, even if the championship was decided. But if we're being perfectly honest, when it's going down to the wire at the front, that's the best you're going to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be appointment television. Absolutely. So we will be back for Qatar. Good news is it'll be more AM rather than PM, which will at least help me that way. If we have another 7 hours of waiting for the FIA to do something, at least it'll be into my mid-afternoon and not my overnight like it was last time. So anyway, we'll do our best to keep things covered. Stay attuned to our social media. If stuff breaks, we'll obviously bring it to you. I feel bad. We haven't even really talked about the Felipe Massa decision. There's a whole shit ton of other stuff we could talk about. But right now, we got to focus on this championship, man. That's where our focus needs to be. So like I said, if we can do a preview, we will do it. It will probably be quick and dirty just to probably get it out. If not, we will talk to you on the other side of Qatar. Whole lot to play for. Enjoy these sessions. Ride this roller coaster, man, because it only comes around every once in a while. The next 5 years could be boring. We don't know. But anyway, until then, take care of yourselves. Happy Thanksgiving in the U.S. if we don't record before then. And be thankful to your family. Be nice to your family, whether you agree with them on everything that they say or not. Sometimes our politics can be a little crazy, but don't do it at the Thanksgiving table. Put that all aside for one damn day and like each other, dang it. But anyway, till then, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at OutlapF1 Podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.